Hi there. Thanks for joining me here on Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, the founder of Bare Bones Yoga and the creator of the Momentum Magic Method, the way to become a confident teacher, one who effortlessly walks around the room, shares clear cues, easily builds sequences, and speaks from her heart, sharing authentically with her students. On the podcast, you'll hear anatomy lessons, stories from teachers, interviews with others in the field, and a dose of personal growth, because having a strong, healthy mindset is such an important piece of being a confident teacher. In addition to the podcast, follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Bare Bones Yoga for daily videos. And you'll also see a new link on both of my profiles, my Stan Store link, a literal vending machine for you to select how you best want to be supported as a teacher. There, you'll find links to the podcast, free resources, and other ways I can help you be the best teacher you can be. And don't forget, every single week, in addition to recording you a new episode of this show, I also teach yoga classes and free workshops specifically for yoga teachers. The only way to get your invite is to be on my mailing list. You can do that simply by going to my website, barebonesyoga.com, and down at the bottom, entering your email in the box. Here we go with today's show. Hi there. Welcome to Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, and this is episode 303. I'm recording this on June 27th, 2024. And believe it or not, this is going to go live on July 1st. So we're moving through the summer. First month of the summer is done. So this is just a gentle reminder to just get after it. Do the things you want to do this summer. Take the trip. Go to the beach, go to the pool, go for a hike, go to the farmer's market. I know for me, I have a list of a whole bunch of things that I want to do, and I hope I get to check a lot of the stuff off my list this summer. So in today's episode, I'm really excited to share with you the audio version of a brand new ebook that I wrote. And I want to just tell you a little bit about what inspired me to write this. I actually picked up an ebook from somebody else, and it was such a great way to consume information in this age of like digital everything and so much video. There was something really satisfying about printing it out and reading it, and it was very actionable. And I got to thinking as I was reading it, God, I could totally write an ebook for yoga teachers, and this would give them something tangible. This would give them something they could even pack in their bag when they're going to teach. It could give them something that they could open in a coffee shop and just sit and relax and just absorb the information all in one place, almost like a to-go pack. Like if I were going to pack exactly what I needed to teach an amazing class, this is what I would pack. So over the past week, I wrote the Bare Bones Yoga Guide to Incredible Yoga Teaching. And I know that's kind of a lofty title, but I really wanted something big. I wanted something that conveyed excitement. I wanted something that conveyed the energy that I want for every single yoga teacher, that they are confident that they're teaching incredible yoga classes. And so that's why I just went out on a limb and called it the Bare Bones Yoga Guide to teaching incredible yoga classes. Now, of course, to teach incredible yoga classes, you need to be an incredible teacher. And I know that you are. And I know that inside you is even more potential to be even more incredible, confident, and empowered. And so all last week, every single day, I sat my butt down and I spent a few hours. And by the end of the week, the ebook was done. Now, truth be told, I've already written 2 books. I wrote Stretched, Build Your Yoga Business, Grow Your Teaching Techniques, and I wrote Structure and Spirit. And you can buy both of those on my website or on Amazon. So I had a lot of experience writing books, and those books are books. They're published books. They're copied, they're not hardcover, they're softcover, but they're books. This is an ebook. So this is about, I don't know, I'll just throw it out there. It's probably about 35 pages, but it's really actionable. So I have a whole bunch of exercises in there, not physical, more mental exercises in there that you can do. So it's a great thing to highlight, to mark up, to, bring your red pen and your Post-it notes and, make your lemonade or your iced tea and sit there and just make it a little activity. What I would suggest in terms of consumption is sit in a quiet place and give yourself maybe 20-minute chunks over a period of a week, and you'll be done. The last thing I want you to do is download it and never look at it. That just is such a bummer. If you are inspired to download it, I want you to be inspired to actually read it, because it doesn't do any good sitting in your inbox on your laptop, and certainly doesn't do any good if you print it out and it just sits on your desk. Now, the other disclaimer I'm going to put in there, excuse me, is it's really written for someone who's teaching regular classes, meaning weekly classes. It's not really written for someone who's in their 200-hour teacher training. Now, of course, if you're in your 200-hour teacher training and you're in the beginning phase of training, I'm definitely going to say don't not get it. It's just that I didn't write it with someone in mind who's in training. I wrote it with somebody in mind who is teaching at least one class a week. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the logic behind that. One of the things that I've discovered after years of working with yoga teachers is that there are a number of mindset blocks that get in the way of teachers being exceptional. And in order to bust through those self-limiting beliefs and those mindset blocks, we want to be able to experiment with different things in our classes. And so I want you to be teaching at least one class a week, so that when you read this ebook and you get to some of the experiments, you actually have a place to try them. So again, if you're in your 200-hour training, go ahead and get it, but it's really designed for someone who is already teaching. And the other thing I'm going to throw out there, and I'm going to say this specifically because I know there are a lot of people who listen to the podcast and who write me on Instagram, and you're in your 200-hour teacher training. If you're in your 200-hour teacher training, just be in that. Like when I was in my 200-hour teacher training in 2002, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook. But I can absolutely tell you that if I was in a 200-hour training and at the same time seeking out advice and counsel and freebies and downloads and going to workshops from other teachers, I would be really confused. If you're in your 200-hour, be in that. Just be in that for whatever amount of time it takes. Just 100% commit yourself to that and to the person that's teaching that. Because the reality is there's no right way to teach yoga. There's the way that you want to do it. But when you're in your 200-hour, you're going to be influenced by the person who's running that training. And that's just the way it is, right? The methodology is going to be influenced by that person. The techniques are going to be influenced by that person's interpretation of yoga philosophy and fundamental principles of yoga is all going to be presented to you through the lens of that person. And to then continue to get everybody else's perspective on things can be confusing. And it just takes a lot of time, and it just actually dilutes the impact of the training. Now, the other thing I'll say is I know people right now, like when I did my 200-hour, I went away for a week. And so I was fully immersed in it. I know right now a lot of people work full time. They do their training on the side. Some of them are doing a completely online training. If that's you, a completely online training where you have no human contact. I don't recommend that, but that might be you. I know there are some businesses out there that are selling 100% video only 200-hour trainings. So I know that in the real world these days, with how teachers have different options for taking training, sometimes you might be in a 200-hour and it's all video. And so you're looking for human contact, you're looking for mentorship, you're looking for a teacher, and maybe you happen upon my Instagram and you're like, oh, wow, I'm actually, I'm going to workshops with this person and I'm actually getting some human contact, some human training. So I think that obviously has to be factored in as well. But I just wanted to add that, if you're in your 200-hour, just do that and get it done. Because honestly, that's another thing I'll mention. I talked to quite a few people who signed up for and paid for video only 200-hour trainings, and they don't actually finish them. And they tell me when I interact with them in emails, oh, I have to finish that. Oh, I have to finish that. And see, that's the other thing. If you're the kind of person who signs up for stuff and doesn't finish it, it just gets in the way of you getting to where you want to be. So again, completely immerse yourself, get the 200-hour done, check the box, and then figure out what you need next. So with that, I'm going to go into doing the audio version of the ebook. Now, I wanted to create this audio version because I wanted you to have that option, but I definitely want you to print it out as well. So in today's episode of the podcast, I'm going to go through not every single word, but I'm going to give you an overview of what the ebook has so that you have a companion way to consume the information. So if you don't have, if you download the book, print it out, and along the way, you also want to be driving and walking your dog and listening to the podcast as a way to consume the information, this will just give you an additional way to do it. It's really going to be helpful, though, if you print it out, because it's really got some exercises in there that will benefit from writing down things. So with that, and the other thing I just wanted to mention before we begin the lesson in today's episode about the ebook is I'm going to be doing an event in July, a live training. And so I just want to give you a heads up. I don't know the date of when that's going to be, but if you are interested in coming to, it's obviously virtual, so it's not in person, to this live training, I want you to send me a DM on Instagram, Bare Bones Yoga, and just say the words live training, and I'll send you the invite. I want to start to get a sense of if you are looking for online training. This is going to be a free workshop type format. And so that's why it's helpful if you send me a DM and just basically say free training, and I'll add you to the list and send you the invite when I create it. And obviously then it will be a little more clear what it's going to be about and the date. Okay, so with that, I want to give you an overview of what you can expect when you download the Bare Bones Yoga Guide to Incredible Yoga Teaching. I also want to direct you to the link in my Instagram. That's where you can download the ebook. So you just go to my Instagram page, Bare Bones Yoga, you click the Stand Store link, and the ebook is the third option on the page. If for whatever reason you don't have Instagram, you don't know how to get to the link, or it doesn't work for you, just send me a DM, or you can email me, Karen@barebonesyoga.com, and I'll send you the ebook. So why did I write this ebook? So let me first start out with a quick intro. I don't know as a listener if you've heard any of my background, but let me just share with you a quick intro about me. I started teaching yoga about 20 years ago, and I've been teaching ever since. I started out in the physical therapy program at Boston University, and after a few twists and turns, graduated with a degree in rehab counseling. I began working in a rehab hospital and went on to work in healthcare for over 10 years. After I took my first yoga class in 1999, I knew it was the perfect blend of everything I loved: exercise, mindfulness, anatomy, teaching others, and mindset. I left my job in 2009 and started my own business, and I've been working for myself ever since. I've written books, taught in studios, taught in a lot of other settings, taught children, adults, seniors, teens, people with physical disabilities, and more. I hosted my own TV show here in Boston. I've hosted live events, and obviously I'm the host of this podcast. And I've trained dozens of teachers in my signature program, which is called the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program. I wrote this ebook out of a desire to help yoga teachers simplify their approach to teaching yoga so that it feels easy and fun, and they're able to feel confident and authentic. There are many aspects to teaching yoga, thousands of training programs, and thousands of teachers and teacher trainers. This leads to a lot of input and a lot of influence on yoga teachers with differing beliefs and opinions. You could say this ebook is yet one other. The first thing to remember is there's no right way to teach. There is no one in charge. You can teach however you want. This means you can decide what works for you. What you can look forward to in this ebook is uncovering my unique approach and teaching methodology called the Momentum Magic Method, refined over 20 years of teaching and implemented in my signature program with yoga teachers all over the world. And you can decide what makes sense for you to use, and more importantly, what you want to experiment with, all in service to teaching incredible classes. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is version 1.0 of this book. I'm so excited to get it out there. I decided it was better to get version 1.0 out sooner versus waiting for the perfect graphics and fully designed version to come out later. Yoga teachers need guidance now. Every month, I talk to dozens of yoga teachers who are looking for guidance on how to cue, how to easily build sequences, how to make anatomy easy to learn, and how to move past the limiting beliefs and fears that come up when they teach. It's more important to get this out now than wait for the perfect version. I highly suggest you print this out. This is meant to be printed, marked up with notes and Post-it notes and highlighter. It's meant to be a guide for at least the next 60 days as you read it and experiment with some or all of the approaches in here. And you'll find there are several lists and journal exercises you can do along the way. So it's more than just reading, it's interacting with the content. As you're going through it and questions come up, send me a DM on my Instagram, Bare Bones Yoga. I want to be sure you're getting value and accelerating your growth, not stuck or confused over anything you're reading. Who this book is for. This ebook is specifically designed for a yoga teacher. I actually found a typo there. This ebook is specifically designed for a yoga teacher who has completed their 200-hour teacher training and is teaching at least one live class per week. So I already told you about that part. So here we go. The key building blocks to incredible yoga teaching. Part 1, the first thing is a mission. Your mission is what gives you purpose. It's what makes it easy to describe what you teach, how you teach, and who you help. Imagine you ran into a friend at Starbucks and they said, "What inspires you to teach yoga?" It's your answer to this question. Journal exercise. Create your mission by answering these 4 questions. What inspires me to be a teacher? Who do I want to help with yoga, and what inspires me to help this person? What unique qualities and experiences do I have that will help me do this? How do I want to do it? What does it look like? So that is part 1. Part 2, an empowered mindset. An empowered mindset is one of confidence, authority, and self-worth. It's feeling qualified and doing what you want to do when you teach yoga without asking for permission or looking for approval. Journal exercise. Answer the question, what does being an empowered yoga teacher look like? Here are some things that might suggest a lack of feeling empowered. Number 1, berating yourself after class, as in, why didn't I do better? Number 2, asking students if they liked class because you're looking for approval. Number 3, changing your sequence when you don't want to, but more out of a feeling of pressure to do so. Number 4, using someone else's words, quotes, ideas, cues, logic. Number 5, telling yourself to stay quiet and not sure what part of you wants to share. These are just suggestions, and there is always context for everything we do. Keep that in mind as you review these. Okay, part 3, a solid understanding of the key aspects of anatomy. Most yoga teachers I've talked to tell me anatomy is hard to learn and they didn't really learn it in their 200-hour teacher training. Part of the reason for this is that every training program focuses on different things under the topic of anatomy. Some teachers tell me they only learned about the spine. Some teachers share they learned in depth about muscles and muscular contraction types, muscle fibers, and muscular actions, but not how to apply it to teaching. We're not here to debate the best way to teach anatomy, but I can share what's worked for the teachers I've trained, learning just what you need to know and in a step-by-step way. When you take a subject that's as big and complex as anatomy, the first thing we need to do is make it more manageable. We do this by defining what we need to know for teaching yoga. Next, we break up the learning process into steps, and the steps need to be presented chronologically. In this way, you learn step one, and then you move to step two. What you learned first, you use in the second step, and so on. A big part of learning anatomy is believing it's possible. Lots of yoga teachers tell me they didn't like science when they were in school, or they tried to learn it in their 200-hour teacher training and found it hard to learn. Let me be clear. Understanding anatomy for yoga is not optional. It's required. The problem is there's no standardized test to take, so what each teacher knows is a factor of the training they got, any additional training they do, and what they learned. The other challenge is that it's not enough to know it. You have to know how to apply it. You apply it through your cues, sequences, answers you give to students when they ask a question, modifications you offer, and assists you provide. The amazing thing is that when you learn anatomy, you'll not only feel so much more empowered, but you'll be able to help your students so much more. You'll feel more qualified. You'll understand the why behind the cues you share. You'll be able to create sequences with anatomical themes and share anatomy-based cues. These are only some of what's available to you when you understand anatomy. I created a 10-step blueprint to learn anatomy. I've used this to teach anatomy to hundreds of teachers, including those in 200-hour trainings and in my own program, the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program. I'll share the 10 steps with you here. Step one, understanding anatomical position, what it is, and what it means to us as yoga teachers. Step two, key anatomical movements. Step three, key joints. Step four, key bones. Step five, how muscles work. Step six, key muscles. 7, muscles and poses. 8, applying anatomy to cues. 9, applying anatomy to sequences. 10, learning what fascia is and the technique of myofascial release. Notice that the first section is what to learn. And when you get to muscles and poses and beyond, you're applying what you learned to the skills you need as a yoga teacher. Bonus activity, visit the link in my Instagram bio at Bare Bones Yoga and test your current level of knowledge on anatomy. Since there is no standardized test in the yoga industry to evaluate how well you understand it, I created a 20-question test. You should get every question correct if you're currently teaching classes. Is the test 100% comprehensive? No, but it's a start. And what it's designed to do is uncover learning gaps. It's designed to empower you in recognizing what you don't know so that you can do something about it. A sequence solution. Having a sequence solution means you've got an easy, repeatable process to create a sequence. For many yoga teachers, they start fresh every time. They grab their journal and start writing. Over time, they have dozens of sequences, have spent hours and hours writing them out and practicing them, and then their experience when they're in the studio is suboptimal. They tell me they feel pressure to bring their notes because they often forget what comes next in the sequence. I also hear teachers compare themselves to others, and that motivates them to create complicated sequences. They use phrases like, "I want my class to be flowy like hers," or "I wish I could throw in little variations just to make it different." We'll get to beliefs and mindset blocks around sequencing later. For now, let me share with you my easy step-by-step process for creating a sequence. Free download. Visit the link in my Instagram bio at Bare Bones Yoga and download my sequence building template. First, make a commitment to teach from what you know. This is where you'll begin your sequence building. This is one of my empowerment sayings. When you teach from what you know, your confidence grows. What teaching from what you know looks like is you sit down and write your sequence out based on what you know. You don't use books, videos, YouTube, apps on your phone. You simplify and teach from what you know. What you'll find is sequence building takes less time and it's easier for you to remember. The next thing to commit to, even if it's just to try it out, is to stick with the sequence you create over and over again. Teach it until you can do it without notes and without your mind going blank. Teach it until you can teach it by doing the walk and talk. What this will do is file it in your brain as a sequence where you have unconscious competence around that particular sequence. We'll talk about this concept more later, but for now, what it reflects is you know the sequence so well, you don't even need to think about it, hence the unconscious part. And you're therefore able to teach it really well. That's the competence part. Again, more on this neuroscience learning framework later. Now that you've made these two commitments, here are the sequence building steps. 1, decide on the sequence objective. 2, pick the sections of the sequence that match the objective. 3, pick the poses that go in each section. That's it. You could literally write this on a napkin. That's how easy it is. The objective of the class answers the question, why are we here? What's the point of this? The sections of the sequence are things like sun salutations, balances, triangle series, etc. Free video. DM me on IG sequence video, and I'll send you a training video that breaks this down. Next section, a cues strategy. A cue strategy is an approach to cueing that allows you to organize your thoughts and share cues without having to use a script. Think of it as an outline, a framework to organize what you know. When I talk to teachers, they tell me, I have all this stuff in my head and I'm not sure how to say it or what to say. This cueing strategy will help you organize what you know. The other aspect to this is that the strategy I'll share with you puts you in the driver's seat as to what to say instead of me saying, say this for this pose. That just creates repeaters and not teachers. My whole approach to training teachers is to empower them to speak from what they know, rather than saying, that's what I was trained to say. Please don't say this. Even if it's literally true, it basically communicates to the listener, I'm just doing what I was told to do. You always have agency over what you say and what you do. If you're not sure, say something you can stand behind. That's where the empowered feeling lies. So here's the strategy. There are 4 types of cues. Action speaks to action, the what to do. Alignment speaks to the shape, often the relationship of one thing to another. Anatomy speaks to an aspect of the anatomy. Somatic, ask questions to give the students a chance to notice what they feel. This is not telling people you should feel XYZ in this pose. Now that you know the 4 types of cues, take a step back and recognize what this does for you. It allows you to decide what kinds of cues you want to use and when. It organizes your thoughts for you. It's like an outline of sorts, or you can think of it like a tool belt you'd wear in class with each cue hanging off the belt, and you decide what tool to use in each pose. Your next step is to use the cues in frameworks. This is a way to mix and match different types so you have a strategy for cueing, not a script, before your next class. Let's say you're teaching a beginner's class. You want the cues to be easy to understand. By the way, they all should be, but action cues are the easiest among the 4 kinds. So you tell yourself before class, I'm going to use all action cues in this class today. Then when you go in and teach, you simply keep focusing on that type of cue. No anatomy, no somatics, no alignment. Or maybe you add those in every once in a while. That's just one example. See how it works? Free video. DM me on IG cues video, and I'll send you a training video that breaks this down. My favorite framework for sharing an anatomy-based cue is 3 action cues and 1 anatomy cue that speaks to a muscle concentrically contracting. An example might be in Warrior 1, step your right foot forward, action cue, drop your back heel, action cue, reach up, action cue, squeeze the muscle of your back thigh to engage your quadriceps to help you straighten the knee. Anatomy cue. While this is by far not a detailed explainer on how to use my cues framework, it will get you started experimenting with a new technique. Get the training video above as a next step, and if you're ready, contact me for an eBook incentive to enroll in my full program to get the full scoop. The other aspect about cueing to keep in mind is that there are 3 qualities to great cues. Clear. Is the cue clear and easy to understand? Conviction. Does the yoga teacher believe in what they're saying, and can they explain the why behind the cue? Connection. Can the teacher see the class to determine if the cue is working? You'll see my saying below speaks to connection. Bare bones yoga empowerment saying. Say the cue and watch what they do. Your ability to build connection with your class will come in part from how much they understand what you want them to do. I'm sure you know the feeling. You take a yoga class and the cues just land right in your nervous system. You know exactly what to do. It's like the teacher is speaking just to you. This is an amazing feeling for a student. And as a yoga teacher, you can evaluate how much connection you're building by watching your students to see if your cues are getting the desired effect. This is another reason it's powerful to do the walk and talk instead of the practice with me approach. You're in a perfect, upright, focused, and present position to see how well your cues are working. Familiarity on the history and key concepts in yoga philosophy. This guide focuses on the tactical and mindset aspects of teaching, but we can never forget that we're teaching a practice that has been around for thousands of years and has deep roots in philosophy and tradition. In today's world, scientists, researchers, and neuroscientists are finding that many of the traditions of yoga practice, the breathing exercises, the mindfulness techniques, and the physical movements have powerful effects on health and longevity. While we won't get into this aspect of teaching here in this ebook, know that it's implied that you understand the broader context within which you're teaching your classes, and that it's different than other kinds of exercise. Further, in your 200-hour training, I trust that you built an understanding of the key principles in this area. Your teaching vision. Anytime I speak with a yoga teacher, I always ask them, what do you want to be doing? What's your vision for yoga teaching? This is rarely asked of a yoga teacher, but it's so important. Having a vision is what drives us as teachers to take on certain classes, to create sequences with a specific style or theme, to teach a certain type of person or group of people. It's what makes your eyes light up when someone asks you, what do you most want to do as a yoga teacher? It might feel out of reach right now, and maybe you're not clear on how you're going to get there, but it's what inspires you to take specific steps to improve. You remember we talked about your mission earlier. It's a little different from that. The mission is why you want to teach the specific way you teach. It's your sense of purpose. Your vision is what you can see in your mind when you meditate on being the best teacher you can be. It's most likely that funny feeling you got when you saw the title of this ebook, The Guide to Incredible Yoga Teaching. When you saw that phrase, something popped into your mind as to what that looks like to you. That's your vision. Bonus activity. Visit the link in my Instagram bio, Bare Bones Yoga, and do the yoga teacher vision exercise. It's a guided exercise that will help you unlock your vision. Next section, daily habits to maintain an empowered mindset. We all have our ups and downs. We're each bringing all of who we are as individuals to the studio as we teach our classes. That's why I like to remind people that the work you do to be a more empowered yoga teacher will actually help you develop a better relationship with yourself. For instance, if you feel like you're a shy person and that gets in the way of teaching your classes because you wish you could just hide in the back of the room, that's probably something you feel in your life as well. And while there's been a lot of focus recently on people who are introverts, if it's something that's a barrier for you, being shy that is, your willingness to experiment with new ways of showing yourself to others as a yoga teacher will actually help you disprove the belief that I am a shy person and there's no changing that. I shared a short list with you earlier about ways you might be giving your power away, teaching in a less than empowered way. And next, what we'll focus on are some daily practices you can do to retrain your brain to a more empowered way of thinking. Just like an exercise program, this is a retraining for your brain to basically change the set point from where it is now to a higher baseline. One where you're more positive, more flexible, less rigid about the perceptions you have about the kind of yoga teacher you are, and therefore the kind of person you are. Keep in mind, if you train a yoga teacher, but underneath they don't feel like they're qualified to teach, for instance, the limiting belief, that teacher will always have a confidence issue because there's a belief that is blocking their confidence. These daily habits are meant to loosen your attachment to self-limiting beliefs and connect you to a more elevated way of being for life and for teaching. These daily practices are based in neuroscience and leverage the brain's ability to change in response to experience, what's called neuroplasticity. Here they are. 1, visualization, seeing in your mind the kind of yoga teacher you want to be in detail. 2, positive affirmation, using positive language to affirm the kind of teacher you want to be. 3, focusing on things that enhance your mood and reinforce your vision. 4, journaling. 5, vision boards. 6, daily gratitude. 7, yoga. 8, meditation. Next step for yoga teachers who want more. Visit the link on my website, barebonesyoga.com, and visit the link for the Mindset Method, a 4-part training where I walk you through how to become a more empowered yoga teacher using specific strategies like the ones you're reading about here. Next section, honing your ability to identify beliefs. What is a belief? It's not a fact. It's just something you think over and over again until you think it's true. How do beliefs get in the way of teaching incredible yoga classes? They can cause us to do things in our classes that we might not want to do, or we feel pressured to do. Beliefs can cause us to pretend to be someone we're not and hold us back from being authentic. Common beliefs. I have to change my sequence weekly or my students will get bored. I have to practice with my students because they're visual learners. I must ask for feedback after class and change how I teach based on feedback. There's such a thing as a safe yoga class. It takes years to be a good teacher. Anatomy is hard to learn. Now that you have a sense of what a belief is and some examples of beliefs, take a minute and ask yourself, do I believe any of the beliefs above? Mark the beliefs you believe. Now ask yourself, as a result of having the belief, what teaching behavior does that belief cause me to have? An example would be the following. If you believe that you need to change your sequence weekly or your students will get bored, that causes you to plan a new sequence every week. This might take 1 or more hours every single week to create the sequence. It might also mean that when you teach, you're always teaching a sequence that's new to you. So you have to use notes and practice with your class. So as a result, believing that one thing results in time weekly to create a new sequence, a need to use notes when you teach, which can be a distraction to you, a need to practice with your class, which means you can't see your students and they can't hear you well, among other things. One of the main strategies I teach to bust a belief is to offer the teacher an experiment to do for a few weeks. You test out a new approach to teaching that challenges the belief simply to see the results. This is what I call being a scientist instead of just following what you were, quote, told to do, unquote. In the example above, here's the experiment. I've used this with a bunch of teachers and they all said, how come I've never tried this before? This is amazing. Pick a sequence you know well. Use it for the next 6 classes. After each class, write down what happened. How did you feel? Did anyone leave class? Did anyone say, hey, why are you teaching the same thing? Did your class numbers drop? And do you know it was because you taught the same sequence? Did you feel more confident by class number 6? Were you able to drop your notes by class number 6? I just picked 6 classes as a starting point. I taught the same sequence for years. You can pick whatever time frame you want. What I can bet will happen, and I know this from tons of experience with me and teachers I've trained, is that only good will come of this experiment. You'll disprove your belief. You'll get your planning time back in your life. You'll gain confidence. Your students will benefit from you walking around more. This is just one example. Imagine what's possible for you when you experiment with new things in your classes, all in an effort to disprove beliefs that simply hold you back from teaching in the most empowered way possible. This is what exceptional yoga teaching looks like. Next section. Identify what makes you unique. When you started teaching yoga, you already had years of your life behind you. You have life experiences, work experiences, knowledge, habits, behaviors, and skills. You can and should leverage all of these things when you teach, not just the things you were taught in teacher training. For instance, that skill you have to make people laugh, you can use that when you teach because it's an authentic part of who you are and will help you stand out. That ability you have to keep things organized, you can use this to create your own process for building a sequence. Use the list below to start to identify what makes you unique. The better you can describe this, the more you'll stand out from other teachers and you'll make your classes memorable. What's my mission? We talked about this earlier. Take a few moments and write it down. What's my teaching method? Write down a description of how you teach. What techniques do you use? Do you do the walk and talk? Do you do the practice with me approach? Do you focus on anatomy or somatics? Write down anything that describes your approach to teaching. What's my message? Write down what you hope people take away from a class with you. How do you hope they feel? What do you want them to learn? What kind of mindset do you have? Is it a growth mindset where you believe anything is possible for you? Where you believe you can learn whatever you need to so you can be the kind of teacher you dream of? Do you have a fixed mindset where you believe that how you are now is how you'll be forever? What mindset-based lessons do you share with your students, if any, via your cues or themes in your classes? Momentum. Are you someone who's ready to take on new challenges, or do you resist change and growth? How do you help your students build momentum in their practice? Movement. If you were to think of starting a movement, what would it be about? Even if you're teaching one class a week, think of how you could use that one class to build a small, dedicated community of students, all connected via their love of your classes. What would that movement look like? What would make it unique to you as the creator of that movement? One other question to ask yourself has to do with fear. Every yoga teacher has a little bit of fear when they teach. If you haven't noticed, it takes courage to stand in front of a room of people and teach a movement-based practice that's been around for thousands of years. So if you've got a little or a lot of fear, it's natural. But what fear does, in part, is that it holds us back from being authentic. It holds us back from teaching in our most unique way, the way only we can. It's the stuff we want to say that we don't out of fear of judgment. It's the way we want to teach that we resist because we think, I'm not allowed to do that. That's against the rules. It can also be the way we do teach because we feel pressure to teach in a particular way. So the last part of this exercise is for you to answer this question. If you had no fear at all, how would you teach? See what you come up with. Next section. Building the muscle of reframing beliefs. We talked earlier about beliefs and how they can hold you back from feeling confident, empowered, and teaching incredible classes. Let me show you how to reframe beliefs into more empowering thoughts. Reframing is a neuroscience-based technique found in an approach called neurolinguistic programming. It's shifting a thought from one that's disempowering and fixed to one that's growth and possibility-based. Old way, disempowering. I'm too old to teach yoga. Everyone teaching now is under 30 years old. New way. I've got tons of wisdom to share, and there are so many people I can inspire regardless of my age. Old way. Anatomy is hard to learn. New way. I've learned hard things before in my life, so I know I can learn it when I have the right tools. Old way. I'm a newbie at teaching, and I don't have enough experience. New way. I graduated from a 200-hour program, so I've proven I can learn the basics. Since I'm new, I haven't developed any bad habits. I know that when I focus on the basic things, a sequence I know well, action cues, walking around the room, I'll be able to teach amazing classes. Old way. I have to practice with my class because they need me to do it so they know what to do. New way. I can walk around the room and show my students how they're able to practice on their own. What other negative things do you say to yourself that might benefit from a reframing? List them here. All right, next section on page 21 is I give a list of key podcast episodes from this podcast to listen to. Next, section 22 is I review grounding exercises. Grounding exercise before class. Take 15 minutes before class to get grounded in your body and start to shift from whatever happened before you got to class. Start with deep breaths. Feel your seat. Do a guided meditation or quick body scan. Next, take a power pose. If you watch Ted Lasso, you'll know what I mean. Dr. Amy Cuddy, a social psychologist at Harvard, did a TED Talk in 2012 that became one of the most watched talks ever, called Your Body Language May Shape Who You Are. In it, she presents the results of her research, suggesting that how you shape your body can boost your confidence, among other positive emotions. We know this inherently as yoga teachers and practitioners. That feeling of warrior one in our muscles and bones, or even just mountain pose, can shape how we feel. So instead of rushing in and pretending to feel confident, move your body into a shape that elicits that feeling. Bonus activity. Visit the link in my Instagram bio at Barebones Yoga and do the pre-class yoga teacher meditation. It's a guided exercise that'll help you refocus and prepare your mind for teaching. During class, it happens to all of us. We're teaching and something triggers us. It might be a look from a student, or we might lose our way in the sequence. Whatever it is, you can feel your stomach start to flutter, and maybe you start to feel a flush of warmth on your skin. Without a counteraction, it can escalate into a sense of panic. If you find this happens to you, the first thing to do is to focus on your breath. While your students are in a pose, leave them with their breath and take 3 to 5 deep breaths yourself. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice the calming effects on your body as you take deep breaths. Do this again if necessary. Next, focus on one person and teach to that person. Share your next few cues to that one person. This will help you focus on what's outside yourself, and instead of getting caught up in the feelings rising, you can focus on teaching. So the step-by-step is, number 1, put students in a pose. Number 2, take 5 deep breaths while shifting your focus to your feet and the sensation of grounding. Number 3, shift your focus to one student and teach to that one person. Repeat as needed. After class. The tendency of many teachers after class is to seek out feedback. While this can feel customer-focused and like you're building a sense of community, be careful that you're not asking for feedback because you're seeking approval. It's impossible to please everyone in a group class, and rather than ask for feedback in an effort to meet everyone's individual idea of what makes for a perfect class, consider asking students questions after class that invite them to share challenges or goals with you. You could ask, what kinds of things did you work on in today's class? Or simply ask, did you have any questions about the practice today? This is a great way to show people that you care and to develop a rapport that will have students coming back to your class. It's also a way for you to help them with their practice and reach any goals they have. The other thing that can sometimes happen after class is teachers will judge how the class went. This tends to go one way or another. It was either a good class or a bad class. In fact, what's a customary thing teachers say to each other before teaching? Have a good class. And while it's meant as a statement of support, it can tend to set up this framework of polar opposites. When you're done with your class, instead of rating it, look for objective things that you did that you might want to experiment with in a later class. For instance, if you practiced the majority of the sequence and wish you hadn't, ask yourself what caused you to do that and see if you can identify the trigger. If you felt nervous instead of confident, ask yourself what caused you to feel nervous. If you lost your way in the sequence, ask yourself how new the sequence is to you. And if it's new, experiment with teaching it 5 or 6 more times until it gets more familiar to you. Next section, building out your vision. The following things are components of teaching yoga. Your list might include some additional things, or you may not have considered each one of these things. Number 1, class schedule. This covers where you teach and efforts you take to build your schedule. While the standard fare for many teachers is to teach in a yoga studio, there are so many more opportunities you can create on your own. Health clubs, fitness centers, schools, nonprofits, and hospitals are just a few alternate sites. Use Indeed.com in the US to find jobs in your area, as well as your personal network, and simply reaching out to non-yoga studio sites to see if there's an interest. Website. While a website isn't required, it can make it easy to develop a following and have a place to refer students to when they want to know where and when you're teaching. If you teach in multiple locations, this can give you one central place to publish your schedule. This also can be the place where you begin to offer other things to students, like free downloads, courses, or videos. Number 3, social media. This is a huge topic, but it's important to include it on the list. You can use social media as a way to build a brand, to give your local students a way to learn from you when they're not in class, and also help you to reach people all over the world. While you might not think that it's on your radar to do any of these things, the fact that social media is completely free makes it an easy yes to use in some way. Even creating an Instagram or TikTok account simply to teach yoga poses can be an easy and quick way to support your students, give them a place to go when they're not in your class, and start refining your teaching. Creating your own opportunities to teach. This is another big topic and one that I cover in detail in my book, Stretched. It's important to ask yourself what kinds of teaching opportunities you're drawn to and seek those out. Having said that, if you're drawn to teach in non-traditional settings, I use that term loosely, meaning non-studio settings, there's a few things to keep in mind. First off, you'll be seen as the expert. When you're outside a yoga studio, so let's say in a school, nonprofit, or hospital setting, you're brought in as an expert to teach yoga classes. If you're dealing with imposter syndrome or have other mindset blocks that cause you to feel anxious about this role, it's imperative that you do the mindset work you need to so that you can take on opportunities like this. A great next step is to take my training, the Mindset Method training I offered earlier in our conversation. Next, creating your own opportunities to teach mean you'll need a plan, the steps to take, and need to be self-motivated and driven to make it all happen. I built my business on creating my own teaching opportunities and found that diversifying my classes to different settings not only allowed me to help more people, it gave me access to those who would otherwise count themselves out because they don't think they can practice yoga. The best overall strategy is to ask yourself what kinds of settings interest you, then start doing the research to see the businesses, facilities, schools, and other organizations that are around you that might be looking for this kind of service. Workshops. I remember talking to a yoga teacher about teaching workshops, and she told me she wanted to take on teaching workshops as a next step, but she thought every topic she wanted to teach had already been covered by someone in her studio. This is what I call a scarcity mindset, and it's pretty common. Bottom line, whatever topic you pick has probably been covered before, but no one teaches it like you. Furthermore, there's always a spin you can put on the topic so it's unique to you. If you're ready to teach workshops, the best first step is to ask your studio manager for the process to get on the schedule. Good news, if you're teaching outside a studio, you can decide to offer a workshop whenever you want. The challenge with that approach is all the marketing falls to you. So if you're already teaching in a studio, the best place to start is there. Next, pick the topic you'd like to cover and start creating your agenda. What's your main topic? What do you want the students to learn? Start to map out the sequence, any lessons you'll be teaching that require demonstration, use of a skeleton or props, use of visuals like slides, and anything else that will enhance the learning experience. The other aspect of teaching workshops is the financial one. If you're teaching at the studio, you'll come up with a split of the revenue between you and the studio owner. If you do it on your own, you can charge whatever you want. Private sessions. A private session is an elevated one-on-one experience to teach someone yoga. The type of person who asks for a private session is usually someone who is new to yoga, injured, or someone who values having private instruction when it works on their schedule rather than conforming to a studio schedule. In my book, I cover teaching privates in detail, but here are some general things to consider. Set your rate. You'll want to set this in your mind before someone asks you for a private. I suggest you start at $125 per hour, but no lower. Have a basic set of questions you'll ask each person before the first session, so you better understand what they're looking for and what their goals are for yoga. Have a way for people to pay you that's easy and quick. I suggest Venmo or Square card reader you plug into your phone. Have a few days before the session to create a sequence that will meet the needs of the student. During the session, provide hands-on assists with permission, but don't practice with the student. Instead, focus on cues, corrective assists, and watching them move. Encourage them to ask questions during the session. Give them at least 10 minutes of rest at the end. Before finishing up, ask them if they have any questions and set up a next session. Online classes. For tips on teaching online classes, download my free PDF here, and the link is in the book. Special events. Special events are a great way to teach yoga and add on related extras like meditation, sound healing, chanting, music, and other things to collaborate with other yoga teachers and wellness practitioners to provide more than just a yoga class. I've hosted several events, some with almost 100 people, and while they can be a great deal of work, it's a wonderful way to grow, help more people, earn additional revenue, and build your brand. In general, events will happen outside a yoga studio space, so the biggest consideration will be renting space. So start to look in your area for spaces to rent. Ask yoga studios, gyms, churches, or event halls if they have rentals they offer. Airbnb is another option. Once you find a space, you can decide on the topic, format, date, and rate. This is just a quick review of things to consider. For more on this, feel free to contact me for help. Online courses and programs. Even before the pandemic, online learning was a booming business, and it's increased even more since. The other aspect of online learning for yoga teachers is that it helps you build something once, like a course or an online class, and then share it over and over again to people anywhere in the world. Online courses and programs can be focused on sharing and teaching yoga or related subjects like meditation and breathing exercises, or it can be used to train yoga teachers. Formats can include monthly memberships, one-time courses, or programs that have a video portion and group or individual training. While it might seem like creating an online course or program is a big undertaking, it's fairly easy because of the popularity of online learning and the multitude of ways to build your course. I use Thinkific for my courses and program and highly recommend them. If you're interested in finding out more about how to get started, reach out and I'll get you started. Next section, your roadmap to growth. If you don't know where you want to go, you won't grow. But how can you create your own path when so much of what's out there looks like hours-based training? While there's nothing bad or wrong with taking a 200-hour training and then a 300 or 500-hour training, be sure it's what you want to do and not what you think you have to do. The best place to start is to get clear on where you want to go, what you want to do, and who you want to be as a yoga teacher. Once you've taken your 200-hour training and you're teaching for some period of time. Here's where to start. Where are you now? Grab your journal and write out a description about where you are now. What are you doing? What classes are you teaching and where? Where do you want to be? This part will be easy because you've already defined it in your mission and vision. This is where I want you to write in your journal exactly what you want to be doing. What does it look like? What are you teaching and to whom? In neurolinguistic programming, which is the study of human thought, the step-by-step activity of thinking, there's a process called the well-formed outcome. Defined by author and NLP teacher Tom Hoybar in his book, NLP, The Essential Guide, he presents a step-by-step to create a plan for making your vision a reality. Here are the steps. What specifically do you want? How will you know when you've achieved what you want? Under what circumstances, where, when, and with whom do you want to have this result? What stops you from having your desired outcome already? This is an important one. What resources will you need to help you create what you want? How are you going to get there, and what's the first step to begin to achieve this result? Next section. Experiments you can try in your classes. One of the things I've found in years of working with yoga teachers in my program is that the number of hours of training they have isn't an indicator of confidence. It's more found in your willingness to experiment with different things in your classes so that you can find your most authentic way of teaching. Belief. I need to practice with my students where they won't know what to do. Experiment. At your next class, share with the students that you'll be walking around more. Encourage them to focus less on you and more on their practice. Start teaching and see how long you can stay on your feet. If you feel the need to do a quick demo, do it. If you go back to practicing with them, make a mental note as to what caused you to practice with them and evaluate it after class as a requirement or something you did out of nerves or habit. Belief. I need to mirror for my students so they know what side we're on. Experiment. Use cues that tell the student what side to do, as in step the right foot forward. And you step your right foot forward instead of having to convert it to the left side, so you're mirroring them. The alternate technique is to simply experiment with the walk and talk as described above, and then you don't need to mirror them at all, since you're teaching by walking around. Next one, belief. I need to change my sequence weekly or my students will get bored. Experiment. Use a similar or the same sequence for the next 10 classes and see what happens. Does anyone comment? Do your class numbers drop? What do you notice about your ability to teach without notes or without practicing with the class? Does that shift in that you're able to walk around more and remember the sequence without looking at your notes? These are all things to consider. Another related factor, when you teach the same sequence for several classes in a row, note how much time you get back in your life that you'd otherwise be spending prepping for your classes. Also note any shifts in your nerves, anxiety, and feelings of overwhelm. There are more experiments you can try, but this is a start. The idea is to ask yourself, what am I doing out of a belief that I have to do it versus I want to do it? These are the areas where you're giving your power away. The walk and talk approach and the practice with me approach. Let's start out by having you identify your current style of teaching. Are you walking around the room? Are you practicing the entire sequence with class? Or are you doing something that's a blend of both approaches? You can teach your classes however you want, but in this section, let's get objective about the mechanics of each style. Walk and talk approach. You can see your students. You can assist your students. You can modify the tone, moderate the tone, volume, and pace of your voice as you want to, not defined by how your voice is affected by your practice. You can change your cues based on what you see your students doing. You can see how your cues land on your students and if they're having the desired effect. You can moderate your energy level differently because you're not exerting energy on your practice. Your risk or tendency for overuse injuries decreases, especially if you teach a number of classes every week. You can build your confidence by allowing your students to see you clearly. You can learn how to share cues from your knowledge and technique instead of from your own practice and somatic experience. You can give your students a chance to build their auditory learning skills. You build your skills to remember the sequence without remembering it from your practice. Now, the other approach is the practice with me approach. In the practice with me approach, you become a visual anchor for your students. You aren't able to see your students, especially if your mat is turned sideways. You can leverage what you're doing in your own practice to share cues. You can leverage what you're doing in your own practice to remember what comes next in the sequence. Students become used to practicing with you instead of practicing on their own. There's a third approach, which is a hybrid approach, where you start out on your feet walking around, and as you see people need help, you do a quick demo. If you're practicing with your students and you're curious about what's possible if you switch to the walk and talk approach, refer to the sections on experimenting in your classes and try that. Next section, building unconscious competence. Imagine teaching and knowing what you're doing so well, you don't even need to think about it. That's an amazing place to be. It allows you to have so much more energy and focus available for teaching. But for many yoga teachers, they shift and change things often, so they're constantly in a place of thinking about what they're doing. There's a great deal of resistance to teaching a similar sequence from class to class, if not the same exact one. This one shift in belief alone can help you build what's called unconscious competence, a level of knowing something so well you can do it without thinking about it. Think of when you drive a car now compared to when you were young and learning. Now you get in the car and drive and don't even think about what to do. You just know it. So with that, here's a common framework for building knowledge and how it applies to yoga teaching. I didn't create this framework, but I've heard it presented over the years by coaches and trainers. Stage 1, unconscious incompetence. Everyone starts here. You don't know what you don't know about yoga teaching. This is you before you start your 200-hour training. Phase 2, conscious incompetence. This is the phase when you start teaching and realize, wow, this is harder than I thought. Or you might realize, wow, my 200-hour teacher training didn't prepare me for how to actually teach. First of all, take a deep breath. This is often a phase that many yoga teachers go through as well. The best thing to do at this point is simplify. But what many teachers do is they start to overcomplicate things in response to feeling nervous and unprepared. Instead, use this approach. Have one sequence you teach regularly, use action cues, use the grounding exercises here in this book. Conscious competence. This is when you begin to feel more confident and you're more able to remember your sequence without notes and without practicing with your class. And then the last one, unconscious competence. This is when you're teaching and it feels easy and fun. You don't need notes, you walk around the room. You feel like an expert. You engage freely with your students. You teach sequences you love and you don't feel pressure to do anything you don't want to do. You're fully empowered, teaching exactly as you want. Now, in the next section, I give you your go-to toolkit, and I list 6 things. 1 to 2 go-to sequences, a cues framework, free class meditation, empowerment mantra, a connection to your mission, 3 to 4 general themes you can use in your classes. And then I include a number of links to a number of resources to download. And then in the last section, which I'm not going to read here on the podcast, I go into a next step, how we can work together. And there's only going to be a handful of teachers who read this ebook and take me up on that offer because they're ready for more. And so I'm going to just leave that last page for you to read. So with that, we are coming to an end of this episode. You now have an audio version of the ebook, The Bare Bones Yoga Guide to Incredible Yoga Teaching. And I want you to print it out, go through the exercises that you heard as you were listening to the audiobook, use those exercises to enhance the amount of learning and the shift to a more confident way of teaching that you get from both listening to this audio version and downloading and printing out the ebook itself. And the last thing I'll just say is, again, to get the ebook, just go to my Instagram, Bare Bones Yoga. You'll see the link in my bio when you click it. I think it's the 3rd option to pick, free ebook, and there it is. If you have trouble finding it, just send me an email, karen@barebonesyoga.com. That's it for today. When you hear this, it'll be July 1st. I'm hoping that you're having a wonderful summer, and I look forward to talking to you on the next episode of Conversations for Yoga Teachers. Thanks for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed it. And hey, one more thing. While I don't know you personally, I know what a yoga teacher looks like who's ready to work with me. She's ready to take action. She's looking for someone who has the answers she needs. She knows she's worth the investment. She can't wait to get all her prep time back. And she's excited to make a positive change. If that's you, DM me the words podcast offer to my Instagram, and I will give you a special incentive to work with me inside my signature program. My Instagram handle is Bare Bones Yoga. I can't wait to hear from you.